What's happening, everyone? It's your host, Ryan Allen, and welcome to All In, All Out. Today, we're going to talk about respect. Now, the way that I'm going to break down respect today is in three ways. First, I'm going to define what is respect. How do we look at respect? The second way, I'm going to explain why we need to understand the importance of respect. And lastly, I'm going to explain how can we not only respect ourselves, but respect others in that regard. This is the style of teaching that I use whenever I teach a lesson at my church. And for those who don't know, I go to Christ Victory Center International in Norwalk, Connecticut. So let's get started. Now, as I mentioned, first things first, what is respect? How do we define respect? Well, first off, I looked at the Google definition of respect, and it reads, a feeling of deep admiration for someone elicited by their abilities, qualities, or achievements. Then I looked at 1828 Webster, and one of the definitions there reads, to view or consider with some degree of reverence, to esteem as possessed of real worth. Now, when I look at those two definitions, it comes across as when one individual has a level of admiration for another individual based on what they have done and possibly what they have said. Because when you look at all of the traits mentioned in these definitions, abilities, qualities, achievements, those are all actions. Even to the 1828 definition, esteem as possessed coming from the word possession, that means you have something of physicality, of real worth. That applies to me as something that is valuable to the individual. Now, growing up, when I heard the word respect, that to me is treating people with kindness. That regardless of how they treat you, regardless of how they acted towards you, you still treat them with kindness no matter what. However, I do need to say, when people start disrespecting you, that's when you got to stand up for yourself. I remember at my last job, the wireless store place, I had a couple of colleagues of mine, they would accuse me of lying, accuse me of not doing my job, accuse me of a bunch of nonsense that obviously wasn't true. And I had one or two options. I could either disrespect them back by calling them names, by saying things that would have bit me in the backside in the long term, or I could simply defend myself in a respectful manner. Guess what I did? The second option. Because it's similar to the fighting fire with fire situation. If someone throws fire at you, you don't throw fire back, let alone gasoline. You throw water. That water is a reflection of kindness and respect. There's been many times throughout my life where I wanted to curse somebody out because they disrespected me. And I remember when I didn't have revelation of the statement, oh, I don't care what they say. No, it wasn't true. I did care, because if I didn't care, I wouldn't have defended myself, not only at the wireless store, but in other situations. It's only that I don't value their opinion as much as I value others. For example, if my mom had made those same statements, it would have bothered me a lot. A whole lot. And the only reason why I defended myself at that time in a respectful manner is because if you don't say anything, what other people say will rub off on other individuals, and then that will spread like wildfire. Well, that's why it's important to be kind to others, regardless of how they treat you. So next, I'm going to talk about why we need to be respectful here on All In, All Out. And we're back here on All In, All Out. Now, as I mentioned in the last segment, we are now going to discuss on why we need to learn about respect, the importance of understanding why learning respect is paramount in our everyday lives. So I'm going to give 2 reasons why we need to do that. And the first example and the first reasoning will be in Titus chapter 2, verses 7 through 8. And if you are following along, I'm reading from the ESV version. For those who don't know what that means, it's the English Standard Version, because the Bible have different versions, different terminologies. So it reads, starting at verse 7, "Show yourself in all respects to be a model of good works, and in your teaching show integrity, dignity, and sound speech that cannot be condemned, so that an opponent may be put to shame, having nothing evil to say about us." So, based on those 2 verses, my reasoning, number one, and just to give a little context, this is Jesus talking to the born-again believers. Not to say that if you're not a Christian, you're not born again, you can't take some of these doctrines and make it applicable to your own life, but just giving it context. So number one, I would say you need to learn about respect so you can live an integral life where people will have no reason to condemn you, as it states in the scripture. No reason to discredit you as an individual. Because if you are a respectful individual, if anybody condemns you, not only it looks bad on that person, but it shows you their true character. There's been many times in my life where, literally many, where people have attempted to put me down, where they attempted to paint a picture about me that was completely false. But because I earned people's respect by first respecting myself, whatever those individuals said or did, it didn't persuade them to think otherwise. So that's why, number one, it's important to know and understand respect so you can live a life of integrity, not having people put you down or condemn you for nonsense. And as I mentioned, those who do put you down, because we live in a world full of evil, not everyone's gonna like you, clearly, obviously, but it will be more of a negative reflection on them. Number two is coming out of Philippians chapter 2, verse 3. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Now, some of you may ask, what does this have to do with respect? Well, as I mentioned earlier, we first need to respect ourselves before we can respect others. It's like, how can you teach someone to drive a car if you don't know how to drive one yourself? That is a paradox, if I might say. And it's applicable because this scripture shows that the respect must come from the heart. It's similar to me when I first got saved. I respected Virgie not from a physical ability, but from his heart. And because what he was doing came from his heart, now he got my respect. He earned my respect. And when you respect people from the heart, when you do kindness unto people from the heart, there's a respect factor there. You can't respect somebody not from your heart, or from pleasure, or from the flesh. It's got to be from the heart. Because if it's not from the heart, it's not genuine. Even the people who have done me wrong, or who has done you wrong, if you still respect those people from the standpoint of you're going to treat them with kindness no matter what, but still stand your ground if they attempt to disrespect you, that's genuine. That is genuine. And that's why it's important to learn and to know about respect. Next, we're going to discuss on how to be respectful to others. Maybe you're having a hard time treating people with kindness that are doing you wrong. Maybe you don't know how to respect people because it hasn't been taught to you. Well, I'm going to give you some tools on how to do that. Next, on All In, All Out. And we are back here on All In, All Out. And now we are going to discuss on how to be respectful, how to live a respectful life. And the tools that I'm going to give you are the same tools I have used in my life back when I first got saved and currently. Number one, you need to learn how to respect yourself first. Like, have you all ever heard of the song Man in the Mirror by Michael Jackson? I'm pretty sure most of you have, where he sings, I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. And no message could have been any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and then make a change. Yes! You gotta start with you. You can't start with other people. You have to hold yourself accountable first and then help other people. You gotta be a follower before you can be a leader. Come on. As I mentioned earlier, how are you gonna teach someone how to drive a car if you don't know how to drive one yourself? How are you going to teach someone to ride a bicycle if you don't know how to ride one yourself? How you are going to teach someone to play video games if you don't at least have a foundation of how to play video games yourself? And the same applies to respect. If an individual doesn't know how to respect themselves, let alone respect themselves, first, they're not going to hold the standard to themselves. So how are other people going to respect an individual who doesn't hold themselves accountable, who doesn't hold themselves to a true standard, which leads them to not respecting the individual? And quite frankly, we only look up to people that we respect. And depending on how that individual lives, we lose respect for those people, or we gain even a more respect for that individual. There's a certain individual right now who I looked up to, who I respected greatly, but because I discovered a certain thing about them, I lost respect for that individual. Because that individual didn't respect themselves enough not to commit that certain act, which now causes a ripple effect for others not to respect that individual. That's number one. Number two, I alluded to it earlier. You gotta be consistent. Once you learn about respect, once you learn to first respect yourself, then you need to be consistent with it. Well, Ryan, what do you mean by being consistent with respect? That means you treat others with kindness no matter who the individual is. And no matter if it's your parents, your friends, your colleagues, your acquaintances, your buddies, whoever it is, you be consistent with all of them across the board. Similarly to the golden rule. The golden rule being in Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. Treat others the way you want to be treated. You be consistent with them. Hopefully they be consistent with you, but you don't worry about what others can do for you. You worry about yourself. And as long as you are consistent, that's the important part. And the last tool I want to give to all of you is something that many people struggle with. And one day I will have a show dedicated to this one word: forgiveness. Forgiveness is something that everyone struggles with. Everyone. Doesn't matter who you are. In your mind, when someone has done you wrong, especially someone that's close to you, sometimes you don't automatically forgive the person for what they have done. It will take a certain time period for a person to process what the person has done and truly forgive them. It's not something as simple as, oh, I'm sorry for what I have done. Because first of all, sorry comes from the word sorrow, and we're not supposed to be sorrowful individuals, but I'll leave that alone. We're supposed to be forgiving people, apologetic people. That's what my pastor taught me. We're never supposed to use the word sorry. I apologize for what I have done, or would you please forgive me for what I have done? Simple as that. But forgiveness will cure all things. It will cure you feeling guilty about a certain person, and it will kill you of not having peace within yourself. If you're holding resentment towards people, man, you ain't gonna live a peaceful life. It's simple as that. So those are my tools on how to respect people, how to live a respectful life. I pray that this episode on respect taught you a lesson or two. I hope that the tools that I've given you, you can use in your everyday life to live a more graceful life. A graceful life that you may feel you already live now. Or you may feel that you don't live a graceful life and you want to improve on that. And hopefully the tools that I have shared with you today can do that. So that's all I got for you today. Make sure to like, subscribe, 5-star rating, leave a review on Spotify and Google Podcasts. If you want to follow me on social media, Instagram and Twitter specifically, it's at Salute to Rye. That's SALUTE, the number 2, Rye, RY. And if you want to follow the podcast social media site, it's at All In, All Out Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, stay blessed, stay well balanced. Thank you.